right, man. Today we're getting into the Kobe Bryant case. This is the jury award for $31 million in total out of LA County that came down in a federal case awarding his family and the families of another crash victim emotional distress damages, millions of dollars for the conduct of LA County Sheriff's Department and firefighters and the way they handled crash site victim photos that were taken by first responders and shockingly were disseminated apparently to other individuals outside the department and shared while they're playing video games and all other kinds of really disturbing testimony at this trial that was really, really disturbing. And I think surprised a lot of people and shocked a lot of people as to how these first responders were handling this extraordinarily sensitive photographs and information regarding this, death that I think everybody remembers where they were when they found out about this crash. This was a really terrible thing that happened to this family. And now they've got to deal with the fact that there's, apparently photographs that were leaked outside of the sheriff's department and firefighter departments and are probably in the public domain somewhere now. So, Pat, what did you think about this case? I thought this was extremely disturbing, and I was kind of glad to hear that there was a very significant damages award against the county in this case.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. I was surprised that I wasn't following the case really at all. And when I started looking into it, I was really surprised that there wasn't a large public dissemination of the photographs, that we're talking about a dissemination to limited groups of people. And by the request from the Bryant family and the Chester family for the large, they were seeking a lot more in damages than they actually received. And you would think that there was a larger dissemination of the photos, but as you dig into the facts of the case and how disturbing and callous the behavior was of the county employees, the police officers and the firefighters, you see why the jury came to the decision they did.
Yeah, that really surprised me too. I was just kind of keeping an eye on this, and I had assumed prior to the trial that, this is one of those instances where a photo gets on the internet and suddenly within 24 hours it's seen by 1 million people or something like that. I was really surprised to learn that there were only a handful of people who apparently saw these photos, and I don't even think they could identify who it was that saw them. And that was apparently the county's main defense, is that they prevented these photos from being disseminated more widely, and that they stopped their dissemination, and they never to date, as of today, have never been disseminated to the public. So they were saying that actually these photos never went public, that the Bryants and the other plaintiffs could not prove that they actually were shown to anyone. There was testimony at the trial that a deputy or a firefighter had shown a bartender a photo, which was really, maybe the worst example of a way to hit on a bartender that you've ever heard of. This was shown to a female bartender. It's like gleefully shows her this unbelievably gruesome and disturbing images. And then, there was also some kind of testimony about a firefighter sharing a photo with another firefighter while they're playing Call of Duty. I mean, just really, that aspect of this trial was extremely disturbing, just like the human behavior here of how these first responders admitted that this things happened. There was also some evidence of testimony about a gala for first responders and media where several deputies were shown these photos. I think that really was shocking for the public. I mean, the American public, to hear that this is the type of thing that apparently happens, at least allegedly. There was testimony at trial about that this is a practice among first responders and deputies that goes on around the country, especially in LA, according to the witness who testified, who was a longtime sheriff's deputy there, that ever since they started taking photographs of accident scenes on Polaroid cameras, certain responders and deputies would keep notebooks of gruesome photos. I mean, this part of the trial to me was what really, I think, woke America up to this is something that really does not need to happen. And who are these people that would do something like that? I mean, that's really violating the public trust in an unbelievably reckless and callous and disturbing way.
Well, you say, who were these people? And one of the people was Captain Tony Imprenda. He's a spokesman, so he's a public figure for the Los Angeles County Fire Department. And when you're talking about that award ceremony, it was recognizing radio and TV journalists at the Hilton Hotel in Universal City. And he was callously showing these during the cocktail hour to other firefighters with their spouses. And some of the other firefighters' spouses saw this, and one of the spouses got really upset about it and complained to the county fire department. And so those internal records reflect that she saw it and complained about what was going on to the fire department. So you're talking about high-level officials within the county fire department that were participating in this.
Yeah, I mean, this part of it is just really disturbing, and I know that this ultimately resulted in a law being passed in California known as the Kobe Bryant Act that makes it illegal for first responders and deputies to share photographs of dead persons from crime scenes and accident scenes, to share those photos with unauthorized people. That's now illegal. Was not illegal apparently at the time, specifically legal anyway in California. There was no law specifically stating they could not do this. I was also kind of shocked. We're talking about $31 million in civil damages here. The crime in California as a criminal crime now is only punishable as a misdemeanor, and it's a top $1,000 fine. So I don't know how much that's going to deter people.
No jail time.
And no jail time. Absolutely. I mean, it's that just seems like a law to have a law that's not going to have any real deterrent effect. Hopefully, though, a $31 million damage award will get people's attention around the country going forward if any first responders are thinking about doing any type of behavior like this. You know, this reminded me, I first remember something like this happening in the Dale Earnhardt case. That was around 2000 or 2001 that Dale Earnhardt was killed in the Daytona 500. And that was sort of the early days of the internet. And I remember that this was the first time that I had heard of a family members for the Earnhardt family, specifically his spouse, were trying to prevent these photos that were taken at the accident scene, or his coroner medical examiner photos. There were some type of photos that showed him deceased that were being disseminated on the internet. And that was the first that I'd ever heard of anything like this happening. And I'm sure, you know, nowadays you can find just about anything on the internet if you're, you know, so looking for it for some reason. And it's really amazing to me that it's taken 20 years for states to have more strict laws about this, because if you think about it, a family has gone through the most traumatic thing that they're ever going to experience, right? This is life altering. This is devastating. And then you have the added layer of, okay, and now these gruesome, horrible photos are out there in the public domain somewhere and have been disseminated to the public. I'd really hope that other states start passing laws to prevent this, and hopefully with more than $1,000 fine. Let's talk about this case a little bit. So apparently there were other people involved in this crash who also sued. There was a family of Chris Chester filed for emotional distress as well, based on his family members who were deceased in the crash. What do you know about the Chesters, Patrick?
Well, Chris, his wife, Sarah, and his daughter, Peyton, were on the helicopter with Kobe Bryant. Peyton was 13 and played basketball with Gianna Bryant, Kobe Bryant's daughter, who perished in the crash as well. So they were on the flight to go to an event with Kobe Bryant and his daughter.
And so these were friends of the Bryant family who were basically riding in their helicopter or a chartered helicopter to get to a sporting event, and were also deceased in the crash. And so they also brought a lawsuit. Let's talk about what kind of actions filed here. What is the basis for this? It's a 1983 action, and people need to understand that what that is a type of civil case that you can bring in federal court for a violation of a constitutional right. Okay, so if you have one of your, enumerated constitutional rights, you can sue in federal court for civil damages for these violations. And as apparently in this case, they were specifically suing for a violation of their privacy rights. And it's a little bit complicated as to what exactly the privacy right is, where it's declared, but there's, some constitutional basis for this in the 14th Amendment, that you have a right to privacy and due process, and that by disseminating private photos or photos that were taken by government officials that should have remained in the government's hands were disseminated to the public in violation of their rights to keep those private. And that was generally the summation of the argument and the allegation. And the standard here was apparently more than just negligence. The standard had to be that this shocked the conscience. And I think that for the county, LA County was arguing that this standard could not be met, and that firefighters and deputies sharing photographs while playing video games or showing them to bartenders and at people at galas, is not shocking. I mean, I guess they have to make an argument, but I just don't see that was probably something the jury had to really think about much. That seemed pretty obvious. However, there was the additional standard that they had to find for any liability on the county, as opposed to the individuals who did this. For the county to have liability, they apparently had to prove that the county was negligent in its training and its operational procedures that allowed something like this to happen. And that's a much harder thing to prove. And that's important for the Bryant and the Chester families, because EMTs obviously are not going to be able to contribute to a $31 million damages award, but LA County certainly can. So it was important that the county be responsible and held liable for the way that it's training its officers or not training its officers to deal with these types of situations. So that was apparently the real gist of the allegations. The other thing that I thought was interesting was emotional distress damages. Pat, what do you know about emotional distress damages? And were you a little surprised that $30 million was the award?
Yeah, I mean, emotional distress is usually on top of something else. Usually you have some physical damages and you viewed something that happened to a loved one, or and you were injured as well. And then you get emotional distress damages on top of that. To see this kind of an award based on that, at first you are a little surprised, but then you think about it, and you think about you've lost your daughter and your husband, or in the Chester's case, you lost your daughter and your wife, and that this government actors are taking pictures on their private cell phones and saving them on their laptops and using them for non-governmental purposes to satisfy some kind of gross curiosity and, seeing these pictures. It's just that I put myself in their shoes, and I'm like, is this jury award enough? Because they've got to live with this for the rest of their lives. And I think it's important to note that though the county says that they got rid of all of these images and everything, there's still some that are unaccounted for. You've got a laptop by a captain that was returned to the sheriff's department that didn't have a hard drive in it. And he admitted to sharing some photos through an airdrop with somebody who hasn't been identified. So you have the county has not secured every single image that was disseminated. So the Bryants and the Chesters have to live with this future concern that they've got real future damages, in the sense that they've got to live with the fact that their loved ones' bodies, images of their dead bodies could be disseminated for people's curiosity. It's just it is shocking.
So yeah, and that was a really important distinction that I know that I wasn't aware of when the trial started. Was when I first heard about the jury award, I was thinking, well, that sounds pretty fair. I mean, if these photographs were leaked and then shown to millions of people, that's got to be a horrible thing to live with. Then following the trial a little bit, okay, you look into it, and actually only a handful of people saw these. And as far as LA County is concerned, they've not been disseminated to people beyond their departments that they're aware of. But that's not actually true, because there was testimony at trial that a bartender saw them and possibly one other person. You have this hard drive, like you mentioned, that's missing. There's in the day and age that we live in, where it is so easy to post a photograph and within hours, millions of people will see it. It's almost a matter of time before these things happen, unfortunately, if they're still out there. And the Bryants and the Chesters know this. And that knowing that, living with that knowledge that at any moment these photos could be disseminated and viral and on millions of people's screens. And that has to be a very difficult thing to live with. And you do see the basis for that award makes sense to me. And that brings up also another odd thing about this trial. Tell us a little bit about how the Chesters were treated differently according to LA County. This was something I think we both found really shocking, the way the county defended this against the Chesters.
Yeah. So in July, the county, there was some procedural motions about joining the trials and everything and having them tried together. The county was against that because they thought that it would promote confusion, that it could risk a fair trial and everything. So the county was opposed to trying the Chester's claim side by side with the Bryant's claim. And then the county made some pretty callous arguments, in my opinion. They said that Chester, this is a quote from their brief that they filed with the court, Chester cannot point to any evidence of photos depicting his loved ones. Unlike in the Bryant case, where witnesses have testified about pictures of Kobe Bryant, no witness has ever testified about seeing a photo depicting Chester's family members. And then they go further and say that they essentially accused Chester of, quote, riding Bryant's coattails and trying to benefit from evidence that pertains only to the Bryant's case. And unlike Bryant, Chester does not live in the public eye and, quote, has no reasonable basis for his fear that photos of his family will be publicly disseminated, close quote. That's from a brief that was filed with the court by the county. And I read that and I was essentially just baffled at the fact that they're saying, if you're not famous, your dead family members are open to being gawked at or whatever these people are doing with these photographs. It's just extremely callous and
only
it shocks the conscience. Right. That argument shocks the conscience.
If a jury hears that argument and you make that argument at trial, that's the type of thing they're going to turn on you pretty quickly, and they're in control of how high that damage award's going to be, and they're going to punish somebody who's making those types of really ridiculous, callous statements. That argument was abhorrent, and that argument basically said to me that LA County is saying, okay, Ben Price, you're not a public figure, you're not famous. So if this happened to you and we took pictures of your dead family members at a crash scene, shared them while we're playing Call of Duty, showed them to a bartender as a way to impress them, to show mangled body parts of your family, that, you're really not having to worry about this being disseminated publicly. That this
nobody cares about you.
Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to care. That is, you can see why this jury award was so high when you see some of the tactics that the county defense attorneys used to defend this case. I find it hard to believe that the individuals basically admitted to this behavior. This was a several days long trial. I know there was witness behavior was also an issue, and people were walking off the stand, et cetera. But that the county would not take responsibility for this and was, making, these type of arguments that, this person's photographs are more valuable in the public eye than this person's photographs. And that, it didn't shock the conscience that people were sharing these photographs while playing video games. And, this type of argument, it just seems like the county didn't have a lot of good arguments. And by trying to make some, they probably just angered the jury and made life worse for them as far as this damages award. Now, I don't know what the record is for a emotional distress damages alone on something like this. I know you typically see them in a death case where, it's as part of their wrongful death damages for the loss of a loved one, et cetera, that, they can obviously be in the millions of dollars. But this is essentially for negligently disseminating photographs, and to only a handful of people that have actually seen it. It does seem like this is a rather large award. But when you look at the trial, it starts to make sense as how the jury got there. And I'm frankly a little surprised, given that they were awarding this against LA County, which everyone knows has a huge, giant budget. I think that they were, a little light, and possibly. What did the family ask for? Do you know, Pat, what the attorney?
I read that it was around $75 million, and the county, their response, and I'm paraphrasing, was something to the extent of, we recognize that the jury, that they agreed with us that the families were asking for way too much. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what I got from what the county representative said about the verdict. And obviously we can expect them to file appeals.
I'm sure something like this is going to be appealed for years. And I really hope that especially for the Chester family, who I would assume don't have anything like the means of the Bryant family, that they do get some of this award sooner rather than later. I mean, it's a tragedy of justice that you hear about these types of cases being appealed for, a decade. And by the time the awards have been handed out, people have passed away. They never even see the money because the litigation goes on for so long. And obviously LA County is going to have the ability and the means to appeal this for years to come. Unfortunately, maybe they'll reach a settlement during the appeals process. But anyway, I think that the Bryants really sent a message that this is not the type of behavior America is willing to accept. And I hope that other jurisdictions, including Georgia, if they haven't already, we'll have to check on that, pass something similar.
One interesting thing about this, it's a little poetic. I believe Kobe Bryant's birthday was the day before the verdict.
Wow. Yeah. I wonder if they mentioned that in closing, because certainly not the type of thing that you would want to happen. If you think about, if you ever, we're so unfortunate as to die in an awful accident like this, the added layer of having to worry about, these photographs being sent and what that would do to your family. Really, really difficult to think about. Okay. So I think that pretty much wraps up this episode. We could talk about this for a lot longer. This trial was really had a lot to unpack.